Sterm Worm, trip of a lifetime. Let's fucking go. Alright, so the good thing about recording a podcast that nobody watches is I don't have owners. I could say whatever the fuck I want. I don't have higher ups like most of these other podcasters that you guys are familiar with, most of who have signed contracts. Not all of them, but a lot of them have signed contracts. If you signed a contract, then there's going to be some things that you're just not allowed to say, and you're not going to be allowed to talk about what I'm about to talk about. But I have scientific proof that they're silencing information from us, and it starts with this empty cup right here. And that's it right there. What you see in front of me is one watermelon that I bought for $4.79. This is fresh squeezed watermelon juice blended in my blender. I got all the pulp out, strained everything, and this is what's left. There's absolutely no water in here. It's not made from like concentrate or anything. It's fucking delicious. It's probably the best juice I've ever had in my life. So my question is, if the fruit that yields the most juice when you squeeze it fresh tastes the best, then how come I never knew about it? How come you don't see fresh watermelon juice everywhere? And that's just how you know that there's something going on. I don't understand how there's not watermelon juice on the menu at every single breakfast cafe that I've ever been to. Cheesecake Factory would make a killing if they had fresh watermelon juice on the menu, specifically because they do brunch. People would go there just for the watermelon juice. There's not a doubt in my mind. A staple on the checklist of being a basic white girl is going to the Cheesecake Factory growing up for your birthday meal. You've done it at least once. You probably used to do it every single year growing up. Order the Caesar salad with ranch dressing and a fettuccine alfredo with grilled chicken. And there's a very high likelihood that you went the year that we introduced the Celebration Cheesecake. But every single basic white chick loves the Cheesecake Factory. There's not a doubt in my mind if Cheesecake Factory had watermelon juice, basic white chicks will be coming there all the time. Like specifically if we had it on brunch. Like if we had it only on Saturday and Sunday for brunch, they would come specifically for that. Basic white girls are gay as fuck when they're younger, but they go from gay as fuck to being straight as hell. When their dancing goes from looking stupid to looking sexy. But the only rational explanation as to why we don't see watermelon juice everywhere is there's some type of collusion by the powers that be. It just feels like everyone's following a code like, oh yeah, we all know about this, we can't say anything. Like, how am I the first person to uncover this, that you could yield so much juice from one watermelon? Like, I mean, you could make a killing off of this shit, you know what I mean? I don't understand how not one restaurant has thought, yo, let's like sell watermelon juice. You don't even see that shit bottled up anywhere, like preserved. How am I the first person to figure this out? And that's what I think. I don't think I'm the first person. I think there's tons of people that know about this shit, but they're just not allowed to say anything. I'm allowed to say something because you just see this shit unfiltered. You know what I mean? Like, this is not a podcast that gets screened by corporate executives and people in suits and shit. Like, all these other podcasts that you listen to, they're all, before the podcast, even the ones that are live, they're not even live. They're all getting filtered by corporate executives in suits, you know what I mean? And if there's something that they don't want being said, then they don't allow that shit to air, you know what I mean? Even though you think it's live, like, that's just not actually live. Oh, let me get these bottles out of the way. But yeah, so that's my new thing, watermelon juice. But people are gay as fuck with their grocery stores. Like, whether it's in Florida with Publix or whether it's in Texas with H-E-B or wherever the fuck you go. I'm guessing wherever I would go, there's going to be people who are gay as fuck with their grocery stores. But, like, it's like a joke that, like, people play up, like, how much they love their grocery stores. Like, people think that shit's cute. Like, there's documented evidence on this shit. Like, if you watch specifically older episodes of Kill Tony, when Kill Tony had just come to Austin, every time someone said they work at H-E-B, the place goes crazy. And, like, it was before I knew what the fuck H-E-B was. And I watched Tony learn what H-E-B was. He was like, what's H-E-B? And then he finds out it's like the grocery store. But it's like the grocery store that's everywhere here. And people fucking love H-E-B. But like I said, they're like mad gay about it. Like, they play up how much they love it. They're like, oh my God, H-E-B is the best place in the world. Just like they do that shit in Florida. Like Publix, they do that shit. It's like the best place in the world. So I'm like, I talked about it in our episode. Like, everyone makes the biggest deal about the pub sub. Like, that's their fucking sub and shit. But yeah, people get corny as fuck with this shit. But like, the truth is, They do probably love their grocery store because, like, no matter what your grocery store is, you're gonna love it. Like, grocery stores are amazing. Like, that's what I've recently realized and shit. Like, in terms of food, they have everything you fucking need and like almost anything you would ever want. I recently figured this out because like I used to not even like fuck with grocery stores like that. All I used to keep in my fridge was beer and water. Like I never used to keep anything in my fridge and shit. But then when I just went through the manic episode, I went fucking crazy. You know what I mean? And like I thought that there was gonna be a shutdown. Like I was convinced there was gonna be a shutdown. I was preparing for like a 6 month shutdown. That's what I had in my head. I was like, it's gonna be about a 6 month shutdown because I thought that the stock market was gonna crash and the dollar was gonna crash. I thought the collapse of America was coming. I thought everything was going to shut down, but I thought the grid was going to remain intact. But so I wanted to be prepared for a 6 month shutdown. I was like, I'd rather be over prepared than under prepared. So then I was like, I gotta stock up. So like I overstocked, yo, and like it's like a 2 mile walk to HEB, the close HEB from where I live and shit. So I would just go there, like fill up a big ass fucking bag of groceries, and like it would be like working out, bringing that shit back to my apartment. Like I'm walking down the streets, like yelling into the air, prove me wrong, prove me fucking wrong. Yo, I'll believe I'm wrong when I see I'm wrong. I believe I'm wrong when I just don't see anything change. You know what I mean? Like if I don't see a shutdown, that's the only way I'm gonna believe I was wrong about everything. But I didn't think there was a chance in hell that wasn't gonna happen, you know. But like all this like started around Memorial Day and shit, and like it's mid-August now, you know what I mean? So like now I really believe like I definitely was wrong and shit. Like I officially don't think there's gonna be a shutdown. Every single weekend, like when I was like going through it, like starting with Memorial Day, yo, I was convinced like the following Monday was going to be the shutdown. Like I'll say, oh, I guess they're not going to shut down on Memorial Day. They're going to wait for the week after the holiday and shit. The next Mondays would come around and it'll keep being business as usual. And I was like, man, confused. I was like, oh, I guess they want to do shit mad slowly, or like they got to wait for the stock market to like actually crash, and like maybe like that it's just going to take a little longer. It's going to get dragged out. That's what I was thinking. And like it's crazy, like I hear crazy shit when I'm out there, like shit that like I really hear, you know what I mean? And like the perfect example of it would be something I heard the other day. Like I'm no longer going through the manic episode, so like this didn't like catch me off crazy, but like something like that someone said the other day when I was picking up food, like it was at a table, and like that's what happens during these manic episodes, you know what I mean? Like no one says anything to me directly, but like I'll be walking by someone and something they say like is like relevant to like what's in my head, you know what I mean? Like to me, like that's the universe speaking to me. But so I was walking by this table, like when I was doing like a pickup the other day, like delivery for work, and the lady at the table, like when I was walking by, who was like sitting down with someone else eating, she was like, that's why I wouldn't mind if this just happened already, you know what I mean? And like that's what the type of shit I would hear when I was out on the manic episode, like someone at the table saying, that's why I wouldn't mind if this just happened already. Like in my head I'm thinking, when I'm in the manic episode, I'm like, oh, she knows about the shutdown, she's like, oh, this is getting dragged out too, you know what I mean? That's the type of shit that happens when I'm manic, like crazy ass shit that like it's like someone actually says it, but like they weren't speaking to me, it's about something else, but it's like the universe like kind of like fucking with me. It's almost like the universe knows it threw me to spin, and then it plays with you know what I mean? Like that's almost kind of like what it is, but that's not what I believe it is, but like that's kind of like what it feels like it is when you hear shit like that. But yeah, I kept walking back from HEB with the grocery bag because I wasn't driving when I go through the manic episodes. Like I don't drive when I go through that shit, specifically when I'm in the heart of it. Like when I'm close towards the end of it I drive, and at the beginning of it I drive, but like when I'm in like the peak of it, I don't fuck with a car. But like I was saying before, like you're gonna love your grocery store no matter what it is. Like everything I'm getting you could get in any grocery store. It's not like, because like I love the shit I'm getting. Plus I'm not only going there, I'm going to Whole Foods too, and like some of the good stuff I've gotten at Whole Foods. But like all the stuff that I'm getting, like you could get at any grocery store. But like grocery stores in general are just awesome. And like if you know someone who really knows how to cook, they can make like banging ass food from shit that you just get in a grocery store. Like they could cook for you from what's in a grocery store and make it seem like you're eating out, you know what I mean? If someone like really knows how to cook. Like I had a kid in my car the other day, like he was like mad annoying. Luckily like he had friends with him, so he wasn't annoying me. He was like mad annoying to his friends. Him and this other one were in a conversation. It was like 8 a.m. Like the last thing I'm be trying to do is have the conversations kids were having. But the one kid was talking about, like not the kid that I'm talking about now, the other one who was engaged in the conversation was talking about like how he used to like be mad picky with food, and now like he's gotten older, he eats out more, like he's like mad into like trying new shit now. And the other kid was just like everything he was saying, he was like, yeah, it's so much better when it's fresh. You know what I mean? Like, that was his answer to everything. Like, oh, yeah, if they have it fresh, like, then it's really good and shit. And then eventually, like, he was talking about, like, going fishing and shit. And, like, when he was talking about going fishing, I was like, oh, man, I know where this shit's going. So he was, oh, yeah, and then we fillet it right there, and then we cook it up. He was like, shh. You don't even know, man. Like, when you have it fresh like that, it's so much better. Like, when you see it get caught and then you're eating it right there, he was like, it's so fresh and so much better and shit. The word fresh is like a trigger word for me because of working at the Cheesecake Factory. Like, everybody would ask, is it fresh? And, like, I hate when people ask that shit, is it fresh? Like, bitch, yeah, this shit's fucking fresh. You know what I mean? Like, this is a busy-ass restaurant. Like, we're not fucking having food rot away back there. We have fucking delivery trucks here every single fucking day dropping off produce. You know what I mean? Like, look how many fucking people in this restaurant right now. Like, how could we have food for that long? How would it not be fresh? But, like, it bothers me, like, when people are so obsessed with the term fresh, because it's like, what the fuck is fresh? I've never been out to eat and thought something wasn't fresh. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not like I'm out to eat and they're serving me wilted lettuce, you know what I mean? Like, everything when I'm out to eat looks the part. As long as it looks the part, I'm not tasting it like, oh wow, you could really tell this shit's not fresh. Lettuce tastes like lettuce, tomatoes taste like tomatoes, and then, like, it's different. Like, the kid was talking about, like, when you fillet the fish and then you eat it, like, that's like an experience, you know what I mean? Like, I've been to friends' houses and, like, they have they're growing like a tomato plant. They're like, oh, you want to try one of these tomatoes? I'm like, oh, hell yeah. And then, like, you taste the tomato and, like, it's like an experience, you know what I mean? Because you just saw that shit get picked. Like, you know you're eating this fresh ass tomato. But, like, if you ate that tomato in, like, a regular salad, it's not like you would taste in that salad like, oh wow, these tomatoes are really good. Like, they would just taste like tomatoes to you, you know what I mean? But when you see how fresh it is, that's when you taste it, because it's like you get the full experience. And, like, that's at least how it is for me, you know what I mean? Like, and the question is, the kid who was in my whip was saying obsessed with everything being fresh. The people at Cheesecake Factory, they ask, oh, is it fresh? Would they taste the difference between tomatoes that were picked off of a plant if they were just normally in a salad? Say they ate 100 salads, if 50 of them had the fresh tomatoes, if 50 of them didn't, would they be able to tell the difference at a significant rate? But, like, that's like a test that you put them through. Maybe if you put them through a test, they're like trying it for freshness. But let's say they just randomly had salads, like you just randomly gave them 100 salads, like when they're out to eat for, like, their normal lunch, you know what I mean? Would they notice these 100 salads like all have these fresh tomatoes in them, or would they just eat them like their normal salads? I think they would just eat them like their normal salads. And the point is, I just think people make a big deal of fresh, but, like, what the fuck is fresh? Like, everything is fucking fresh that you're eating. But the irony of, like, people asking at the Cheesecake Factory, is it fresh, is like, everything is fresh as fuck at the Cheesecake Factory. Like, they have a prep station there where they make everything at prep. Like, all the sauces are made every single day at prep, you know what I mean? Like, so a normal restaurant, I would say, like, everything is fresh at a normal restaurant, but the Cheesecake Factory shit is, like, extra fresh there because, like, they make everything in-house, so they just fucking prep everything every single day. Like, they have people in there before they open at prep station. Like, prep is really, like, the heart of the restaurant at Cheesecake Factory. Like, everything is, like, really, like, homemade there. Like, you hear the word homemade a lot, like, it's homemade. Like, that's another trigger word for me. But, like, all the sauces at Cheesecake Factory really are homemade. So everything is fresh as fuck there. So that's why people sound stupid as hell when they ask me when I'm working at the Cheesecake Factory, is everything fresh? Like, the Cheesecake Factory, everything is fresh though. Like, everything is homemade. But it's not like you could tell the difference that's homemade. Like, if opposed to, like, if they just pulled the sauces out the bottles. You know what I mean? I'm so sure people, the only way people know they're homemade, the sauce at Cheesecake Factory, is if they've been told by a server. Otherwise, they don't know. Like, it's a restaurant where they're going and they're eating every sauce is, like, homemade and every sauce is, like, made in-house and shit. But I can't tell you, like, the last time I've eaten something that looked and smelled normal and I thought this isn't fresh. You know what I mean? Like, everything. I've never eaten anything was like, oh shit, you could tell this shit's not fresh. But like I said before, like, when you know it's fresh, it just hits different. Like, when you pull a tomato off of a tree, off of, like, a tomato plant, that shit just fucking hits different. But, like, I have mad fish in my freezer. Like, fish is good to keep in the freezer. Because it's funny that the kid was talking about the fish fillet. Like, I have salmon, I have tuna, I have red snapper, I have mahi-mahi. I have, I think cod. I have mad different shit in the freezer right now. And I have, shrimp and scallops. And I got big ass, like, squid rings and shit. And I have, like, just fucking a bag of mussels. I got mad seafood in my freezer right now. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not, and I'm the one cooking it, so it's not like I'm making fucking gourmet dishes with them and shit. But like, I'm making like decent shit. Like, it tastes good to me and stuff. But like, I have all this shit in my freezer. Like, I have a friend who is like mad into cooking. He could work on a line right now with like, he could work on most lines right now. You know what I mean? Like, he cooks banging as fuck. If there was like a taste test and my friend was cooking with all the stuff in my freezer and I was cooking with the fish that was fresh as fuck that the kid in my whip was talking about, oh, you gotta try the fish fresh. Like, if I was cooking that fish and my friend was cooking what's in my freezer, like, my friend's food will come out much better than mine. You know what I mean? If we had the same ingredients to work with, and like, if someone like tasted them and shit, whatever food he was making, you would think is fresh because he knows how to cook it. You know what I mean? And that's like a major difference. Like, does the person cooking know how to cook and shit? And like, when you get something fresh, like when you get a fresh fish, like the kid was talking about, wherever you bring it to fillet it, like, they're gonna know how to cook that shit. You know what I mean? So it's almost like who's cooking it a lot of time matters more than is it fresh. But yeah, I eat the fish out of my freezer and it tastes fine to me. Like, I'm not like, oh, I'm eating frozen fish right now. Fish freezes well. And then I saw cookie dough. I was buying cookie dough. And then I saw on the label it said safe to eat raw. And I was like, oh shit, this is going to be a problem, yo. For somebody like me, it's like borderline impossible to adhere to any type of diet when I have cookie dough in the fridge. I fucking love cookie dough. But yeah, like, if I had unlimited money, I'd leave the grocery store with like a full wagon every single trip. Like, there's many different sauces and soups that I wanted and shit. But like, I didn't want to buy everything. But like, if I hit the lottery, I'd leave with a full wagon. Like, I hate that fucking, if I hit the lottery, I'd buy whatever I want. Like, I put a note of it here because like, I was listening to the radio the other day and that was like the theme. Cause like, they're always doing like gay ass shit on the radio. Trying to have some corny ass shit for everybody to call up and like talk about. But they were talking about like, if you hit the lottery, what would you buy and shit. And like, it was because it was a $1.5 billion lottery at the time and shit. And like, that, what would I do if I hit the lottery? To me, it's like such like a loser mentality, yo. Like, that's the gay thing to talk about. Like, what would you do if you hit the lottery? Like, there's nothing I really want that I can't afford other than a house. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I would buy. I would buy a house if I won the lottery. But like, what the house gets me, it's not like I want a house that badly. I just want freedom. You know what I mean? And that's what I would get if I won the lottery. Like, it's not like what I would buy, it's what that buys me. And winning a $1.5 billion lottery buys me my freedom. And that's why like, it's annoying when like they be making a big deal about the lottery, because like, it don't gotta be the big jackpot for it to be a lottery that buys me my freedom. You know what I mean? Like, most of the fucking lotteries buy me my freedom. I don't need $1.5 billion to buy me my freedom. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing that I would really want with that $1.5 billion and shit that I can't get now. You know what I mean? Anything would just be some luxury that I don't even fucking need. But like, not being tied down to a job that you're not working by choice is priceless. You know what I mean? Like, that's what you get if you hit the lottery. You get that freedom. And like, it's funny, I'll have podcast episodes mostly drawn out, and then like, I'll always hear something somewhere that like relates to what I'm talking about. And Post Malone, he had a good comment that I wrote down. He said the goal is to have enough money to never have to worry about it. You know what I mean? And that's probably right around where he is. And like, that's where I would want to be in my life, to never have to fucking worry about money, to know I had food and shelter and basic necessities and shit. And like, I could get a computer if I want. Like, when I need a new computer, I get a new computer. When I need a new phone, I get a new phone. You know what I mean? Like, that's the type of money I want. Like, just to not have to worry about money. But like, I don't need, like, it's not like I'm like, oh shit, that I want that so badly. If I had more money, I get that. Like, there's nothing like that with me. Then like, another thing with shopping on my own, like, now that I'm like buying shit from like grocery stores and shit, like, I got Parmesan cheese from the grocery store because I made a few pasta meals, like, not a bunch, but like, that's something I eat on occasion, shit, pasta. So I bought like this bottle of Parmesan cheese, and it lasted me 4.5 different pasta servings, like 4.5 different dinners. Like, on my 5th meal, that's when I ran out and I had a backup I had a backup cheese, so I used that. But so I was checking something about the ingredients or whatever on here. I'll check and see if it's just Parmesan cheese, and I noticed the servings per container are 45. This bottle of Parmesan cheese is supposed to get 45 servings. I got 4.5 servings out of it. And that's just like a reflection of how far I am from where I need to be in life. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, yeah, I think like, oh yeah, I did good. I got 4.5 servings out of this container, and you're supposed to be getting 45 servings out of a container. When I used to serve at Cheesecake Factory, people would always say to me, do you want some pasta with that cheese? And they would fucking crack up when they said that shit. Like, I'd say 90% of the servers I've worked with have said, do you want pasta with that cheese? Because they see like how high I pile up the cheese at the Cheesecake Factory on my plates, because like that's the thing at the Cheesecake Factory. They have the Parmesan cheese at like every station and shit. So like they used to do fresh grated Parmesan, and then they stopped. They have it already grated, but like it's fresh Parmesan blocks in the back. They grate it in the back so that they don't have servers at the table grating cheese, because like sometimes it's hard to get like a good grip, and I bet people cut themselves and they're like, yo, let's stop doing that shit at the table. But I once, like, I'm bougie with it, but like this kid that I was once serving was like way over bougie. I went to the table with the Parmesan cheese like to sprinkle it on his meal, and he got mad. He was like, oh no, I want the whole block. Like he wanted the Parmesan block, and I had to explain like, oh no, we don't do that anymore. You know what I mean? Like he thought like I was cheating him, but like I had to try to explain to him and his grandparents, her fuckers, with like, we don't do the cheese like that anymore. You know what I mean? And he got like mad, and he didn't want to eat the cheese. You know what I mean? Like he didn't eat the pasta, and not only did not want to eat the cheese, he won't even eat the pasta. You know what I mean? But like the point is like you're getting mad about it, but this is the same cheese you were eating before. You know what I mean? You're just not seeing it being fresh grated and shit. And like that goes back to what I was saying. Like it's funny, I didn't even realize how that connects. That goes back to what I was saying with the kid, with how it's fresh. You know what I mean? Like this kid he sees it being fresh and shit, and like he has his head like, oh, that's the extra fresh shit. So like it tastes better to him and shit when he sees it getting grated. Even though it's the same cheese, it's the same freshness. It's the same cheese that we would have had out as blocks, but we just grated in the back. He doesn't want it anymore because it doesn't have that fresh feel to him and shit. But yeah, not only would servers say to me, do you want pasta with that cheese? Because like that, they see all the cheese, so they're like, the joke is, oh, you have more cheese than you have pasta. But they find that shit so funny. Like every server cracks up when they say that to me, so they all think that shit's the funniest joke ever. And like that's why my stand-up comedy doesn't hit with people. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to do stand-up comedy for people who think that shit's funny. You know what I mean? Like that's why the general population just doesn't understand my comedy. Like they think that shit's funny. They think it's funny to be like, oh, you want pasta with that cheese? They all crack up when they say that shit, yo. That's who tells Joe Rogan whether he's funny or not, because Joe Rogan doesn't know whether he's funny. He has to do comedy on stage and find out whether he's funny. Like I heard someone in a TED Talk the other day. I don't know if it was TED Talk, but just someone giving some lecture that I saw a clip of online. But like the dude was talking about how if you try to satisfy everybody, then you like please nobody, something like that. You know what I mean? Basically saying like, just stick with your guns. Like don't like try to do shit that to cater to others. And like to me, like it just resonated so much with comedy. You know what I mean? Because everyone's like, oh, you find out what's funny on stage, but it's like you do what you think is funny. You know what I mean? Like don't let motherfuckers dictate to you what's funny or not. If in your universe this shit's funny, and that's why like I just don't think it's a good, when you cater to others, I feel like your comedy, I feel like you're gonna get this thing that similar to everybody else. If everybody's catering to what the audience laughs at and the audience thinks is funny, like do what you think is funny and shit. Let people come around to it. But so then like the next thing I have on here to talk about is factor meals. Like that's what I see everywhere now, factor meals. And I saw an ad for it on Kill Tony, which had me cracking up, because the green beans, they were like mad watery. They looked like gross and shit. Like I couldn't believe like this was the plate that they were showing in the advertisement. Like it almost makes you respect their integrity. You know what I mean? It's like the meal can't look that much worse than the green beans they showed in the fucking ad. And like when Red Band was like doing the advertisement for them, like it was like a clip, like he's talking about like after a long workout in the gym, and like they start cracking up like after they said a long workout in the gym and shit. And like they do these recordings in the studio, so like I'm guessing they chose to run with that take. You know what I mean? So like I don't know the origin of it, how that all came about and shit, but like let's say they're just given one speech, because like I don't know how these fucking reads work. You know what I mean? Like if they have like some shit that they get to choose from, and they're like, oh, let's choose that one for Red Band because we all know he doesn't work in the gym, so it'll be like a form of comedy. But if they were just handed one read, and that's the read Red Band has to do a read about after a long workout in the gym, like it just shows you how big of a farce these brands and their advertisements are. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so stupid, like, how they don't cater at all to the people they're advertising with. Like, if you want to advertise to Rogan, you give Rogan the speech, oh yeah, after a long workout in the gym. But, like, that's not what you give for Red Band. You know what I mean? Like, everyone, like, knows Red Band doesn't work out and shit. So, like, it sounds so stupid when they have him reading that. And, like, it's difficult for meal preps to do because, like, probably no entertainers really use meal preps, but brands need to align themselves with entertainers who actually believe in and use the product. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that because I'm like, oh, it's all about integrity. Like, I don't give a fuck who you have advertising your product. You know what I mean? But it looks better when it's someone who actually believes in the product. When you have someone who's doing a read for a product that they're like totally unfamiliar with the product, and then the read is like totally like not relevant to who they are, it's like it's not given the same effect as something like when Rogan advertised for Onnit. You know what I mean? Like, when Rogan advertised for Onnit, he's advertising for products that he used on a daily basis, and you know he used them on a daily basis. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't have to try to sell you on it. Like, his belief in the product itself is what's gonna sell you on and shit. And like, that's why I just think it looks better when you're selling your product through somebody that actually believes in it and shit. Like, otherwise with Factor Meals, like, you're still building brand awareness, but like, you're not convincing the people to believe in your product. And like I said, like, my point isn't like you owe the people better to like be authentic and like transparent. Like, my point is just like, for more effective advertising, advertise with people who genuinely believe in the product they're endorsing. It just looks better. But all the Factor meals look terrible, yo. And like, my problem with them and all meal preps in general is like, they're expensive. Like, they're like always like at least like $15 a meal. That's why I've never tried any of them. Like, back in the day, like, I remember Blue Apron was big. Now you don't see Blue Apron anywhere, but they probably still exist. They probably just don't advertise as much and shit. But that's what they all do. They all go through a big advertising campaign and shit to get you familiar with them. But like, you could go to Kava or Chipotle and get a banging ass meal for like $14, for like $12 at those places. You know what I mean? Barely even $12. So like, I'd rather do that shit than these wacky ass meal preps. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm crunched on time, like, you could just get Kava or Chipotle real quick, because that's what the meal preps sell themselves on, if you're crunching time. Because like, I don't know whether they think people are retarded or whether they think people are just so busy that they can't like prep anything on their own. But like, the meal plans, like, the meals always look whack in all these programs. I'd rather cook on my own than eat these fucking nasty ass fucking pre-made chicken meals. And like, eating out is like mad cheap these days. Like I said, Kava and Chipotle is like mad cheap. But like, you could go to the food trucks here and like get meals for like $12 and shit, cheaper than those meal prep meals. If you get like a lunch meal somewhere, like a lunch portion, or like off of a food truck, like, everything is less than like $15. And like, talking about like the meal preps, there's like a thing called Snap Kitchen. Like, when I say here, I'm talking about Austin, Texas. There's a place called Snap Kitchen. Like, they have like brick and mortar locations. It's not like a service like where the other ones where like you pay for monthly, but like, it's pre-made meals and shit, and like, their meals like actually like do look good. Like, I've seen a few deliveries from there actually, but I've never accepted any delivery. Deliveries are so fucking bad. They're like offensively bad. It'll be like 35 minutes for like $1.30. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my god, I can't believe you even sent that shit my way. Like, so I've never accepted one. I've never done a Snap kitchen delivery, but the meals look pretty good. Like, I've seen them in Whole Foods, and like, I stopped into Snap Kitchen like a few months ago, like a while back, and I like asked the guy how to cook it in the oven, and like, he looked perplexed. Like, his head almost exploded when I asked him that question. They're like only like microwavable. Like, the guidelines like to put them in the microwave. I'm thinking, what the fuck is gonna happen if I put in the oven? But I don't eat shit in the microwave. I don't even have a microwave, so I can't eat shit in the microwave. I don't have a microwave because I don't fucking like to eat out of the microwave. So like, yeah, the Snap Kitchen meals look good, but I'm not trying to microwave my shit, and they're all expensive. They're all like in that $15 range. I'm like, I could fucking eat out for cheaper than this shit. So like, the next thing is cutting the cord, because like, that's like a big trend, cutting the cord. But like, the thing about cutting the cord is like, it's not cheap to cut the cord. Yeah, it's cheaper to cut the cord if you don't replace it with anything. But if you're gonna replace it with Roku, Hulu, one of these like YouTube TV, like one of these secondary websites, like third-party options, like non-cable options, all their cheapest packages are like $50, and I don't even think any of those come with ESPN. And ESPN's really the only thing I watch. If I want to watch ESPN, I need to stick with some type of provider. And Hulu and YouTube TV, all these other things, like, they're $50 for their base package, and that doesn't even come with ESPN. So with cable, what I pay now is 120, and that 120, 60, 50 of it is internet. Internet's $49.99 every month plus taxes and fees, which probably puts it over $60. So if I'm paying 120 for cable and internet, then, and I got phone too, but I haven't had my phone hooked up. But if I'm paying 120 for cable and internet, then that means I'm basically paying $6 at the fees and tax for internet, and I'm basically paying $6 at the fees and taxes for cable and shit. So like, to me, I'm like, yo, that's cheaper than if I cut the cord and go to one of those other options. You know what I mean? Like, because one of those other options are all $50 that don't even, and I don't think they really come with ESPN at that $50 rate. So like, for $60, I'd just rather have basic TV and shit. But that's the problem with cutting the cord. Like, yeah, I like the idea of cutting the cord, but it's not much cheaper to go the other route and to get the other services. But like, home internet's relatively expensive. Like, that's what I think is crazy. Like, to me, a $120 cable bill sounds right, but like, to me, $100 of it should be towards the cable, and like $20 should be towards getting the internet. And like, and that's why I was thrown off when I was about to cut the cord, because I was going to do that, and I realized, oh, I'm only getting $60 off every single month. Like, I thought that was going to remove like $100 off the price. I thought the internet was $20 a month and shit. And then when I went to the website, I was like, oh, it's $50 for the internet. And like, it just feels like internet should be like a fraction of the price. And like I said, it feels like cable should be more than internet. And like, throughout this podcast, like, I'm going to seem like a bitter, like, poor communist and shit. But like, I just think everything is mad fucked up. It feels like we don't allocate labor resourcefully, because like, capitalism has everybody working for themselves opposed to working for progress. And like, I truly believe something that resembles a utopia could form if we allocated labor resourcefully and shit. Because it just feels like we have enough labor. We're just working towards different goals. And like, if you want any reflection of it, like, just look at all the people you see working in restaurants. You know what I mean? Like, all those people working a bullshit ass job. Like, no one needs to be working in restaurants. If you have a society without restaurants, you don't have people wasting their time fucking working in bullshit ass restaurants and shit. And like, it's nice to have the restaurants there as a consumer, you know what I mean? But it's a luxury of a society. You can have a well-run society that isn't like broken and have no restaurants. You know what I mean? You could just have a eat at home culture and shit. And then like, you could have like a few like banquet style, like catering style places, that like commercial places that like cook at like a huge, like they cook huge pots for like for tons of people, like not fresh to order food though, you know what I mean? Like, and that's could be a way of having a culture without restaurants. And like, who would want a culture without restaurants? Well, people who don't want to see people waste their labor standing around working bullshit ass jobs. You know what I mean? Like, if we could have restaurants and not have people working those jobs, if we could have restaurants run accordingly without human beings working them, that would be amazing. But that's not possible. But so the way we would get a utopia would be to remove the bullshit ass jobs and having all those people do work that matters, like part of a construction operation. You know what I mean? Like, not everybody could do construction, but like, everybody could have jobs that relate to that operation. You know what I mean? Like, some of the people that you pull out of restaurants would be great at construction work and shit. Some of them might be drivers to get the supplies to the operation site. You know what I mean? But it's all about allocating labor resourcefully if you want a utopia. And through capitalism, you don't allocate labor resourcefully. But like, another thing that would have to happen for a utopia would be there's no overlords, you know what I mean? And like, that's the problem with like everything. Like, there's overlords in all of our services and shit. And like, the internet is like the perfect example. Like, who the fuck's right is it to profit off of providing internet service? You know what I mean? And like, the answer to that is whoever installed the towers. You know what I mean? Whoever installed the towers has the right to profit off of it. But whoever installed the towers before they installed the towers, it's like, who the fuck are y'all to install these towers? You know what I mean? Like, just let the government install the towers. And like, the government, it's such like a dirty word when I say the government, you know what I mean? But I just mean like, you pull funds from America's capital, you know what I mean? And like, you don't have to have people inside the government. Like, you could outsource all the fucking labor, you know what I mean? Like, you could get people who understand the operation, leading the project, you know what I mean? And like, what you would have is a governmental agency not ran by the government but owned by the government, putting up all the towers, everything necessary to have internet, you know what I mean? And then they would own the internet, and then it's not like everyone has to buy internet from these providers. The provider is us, you know what I mean? Like the provider it's owned by nobody. It's owned broadly. And like the thing about like the providers right now, they're also owned broadly. It's not like they're owned by people. Verizon, who the fuck is Verizon? Who's AT&T? You know what I mean? Like they're corporate entities and shit. So like people hate the government owning stuff, but who would you rather own it? The government or these corporate entities? And when I say the government, I just mean like universally owned. You know what I mean? Like not like owned by Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden. But like the only people that would make money off of it would be the people putting in the labor, you know what I mean? And that's who should be making money off of it, people, and whoever uncovered the technology, you know what I mean? But it's not like Verizon, AT&T uncovered the technology and shit. So why the fuck are they the ones making money off of it? And like, it just, I know I sound so bitter and shit, but like, who's a human being to take control of the internet service? You know what I mean? So who's a corporate entity to do it? If I was the one walking around door to door trying to provide people the internet service, people would be like, well, why is he the one who has this, who's able to provide this to us? Why can't we just get the service? You know what I mean? Who the fuck am I to provide it? And who the fuck is anybody to provide it? Other than the fact that they installed the towers, but they should have never been the ones to install the towers in the first place. And like, obviously, like someone who knows anything about economics could like tell me why I'm so ignorant right now. But I just think that the government controlling different sectors isn't a bad idea, you know what I mean? Because it's the concept is to remove overlords and shit. And like I'll get to it in a little bit. Like electricity is like another one, you know what I mean? Like I get my electricity through whatever company provides it. Austin Power and Electric it is actually. Like who the fuck are they? You know what I mean? Like if I understand why when we find out electricity like activating the grid is a thing, why we didn't use government money to fund, like that's what we thought back then. Like let's say I was alive when we found out what electricity was, and like I was able to explain, someone broke it down to me that we're gonna start up a grid and shit. Like I would have thought that it would come out of America's fund and we would be the ones to own the grid, you know what I mean? Like who the fuck funded the grid? Like these private companies and shit. Like why the fuck do the private companies fund the grid? Like if America has enough capital off of it, why can't America just fund the grid and shit? And then going down the line, like the money's gonna come back to us because people don't have to pay money to these outside companies and shit. But like it's just like, is it someone's inherent right to provide somebody internet service? And like obviously like once people have control of it, we're in their hands, you know what I mean? Like we need them to provide it for us. Like I have no choice on who provides my internet service, but why does some companies have control of the internet? You know what I mean? And like if internet was universal, like if the government owned the internet, then it could just be universally available. Like no one had to fucking type in passwords like to get into the internet. You just fucking turn on the computer and you could go on the internet and shit. But like I got this like whole idea in my head over like who's right is it to profit off of it, because of the new company Zelle. Like they're all over the place. They must be a relatively new company, Zelle. Like they push me over the edge and shit. They're all over the place with their advertising these days. They're just like making money off of money and shit. Like they're like a microcosm of the problem, in my opinion. We could just transfer money back and forth between external bank accounts these days. Like all you need is verification, but like you are able to do instant verification these days. Like it's so easy to transfer money back and forth. How come Zelle exists now? How come a third-party website, third-party company is making money off of bank transfers? You know what I mean? Like who runs Zelle? And what did they bring to the table that had banks like, oh yeah, let's do this through you? Why weren't banks just like, oh, we don't fucking need you for this? You know what I mean? Like it shouldn't cost money to transfer money to anybody. And if it doesn't cost, I'm pretty sure it does cost money through Zelle, but if it doesn't cost money, it's like, how are they making money? But they probably make money off of the transfers. But like who the fuck are they to make money off of the transfers and shit? Like, doesn't money transfer electronically without any type of labor and shit? So, like, I don't understand why they exist. You know what I mean? Like, and I noticed it in my bank because I once had to transfer something through Zelle. And I'm pretty sure my Wells Fargo account, where I was thinking, didn't they used to just let us transfer shit normally? Like, we used to just transfer money. Now, like, you had to set up a Zelle and do it through Zelle. And I'm like, why the fuck are they using this third-party website? And it just feels like we should be able to do it between people's bank accounts without any third party attached to it. And it feels like we could kind of right now, but sometimes they make you go through Zelle. But like, I don't think it's someone's inherent right to make money off of bank transfers unless you're the bank and you want to charge a fee. And like, that's like another thing. Like, if the banks were just like there to protect our money, then I wouldn't mind them making money off of the transfer. If the way banks made money was by protecting our money and then they would charge us fees when we needed to take money out or something, like, that's what banks should be for in my opinion. But that's not what banks are for, you know what I mean? Like, banks are just big investment companies, they seem like, and shit. And like, that to me is like one of the major problems of capitalism and shit. But if like a bank is operating as like a huge investment company, that it doesn't need to scrape off the top with those fees, you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't mind if it charged fees for transfers if that was its way of making money. But banks have ways of making money. Banks ultimately make the money. But so like, kind of like those, oh motherfucker. So that's just like another example of another sector where it's just corporate entities scraping off the top. And like, if we didn't have corporate entities scraping off the top, then the price of living just goes down and shit. Zelle is an example of like a company that's unnecessarily scraping off the top. Then like companies that own the internet, like, who the fuck is anybody owning an internet? That's another thing scraped off the top. And then like another thing scrapes off the top is like insurance companies, you know what I mean? Like, and obviously like insurance companies like play a role the way we have society set up right now, but like, my dream would be for everyone to just be insured through the government, you know what I mean? And like, doing shit through the government sounds so dirty, but like, if it was through the government, but like the labor was allocated externally, you know what I mean? Like, we hire people. It's the same people who are in the field right now in the insurance field will be running these governmental agencies and shit, but like, there's just not a huge business scraping off at the top. Like, I get cold calls from my previous health insurance. Like, I mean, I don't even live in the state of Florida anymore. That's why I don't use their health insurance company, but they're cold calling me trying to get me back, you know what I mean? Like, health insurance companies, like, it's whack that they're employing people to make cold calls. You know what I mean? Like, that's coming out of the price of health insurance and shit. And like, me personally, I don't pay that much for health insurance, but the medical field is so ridiculous right now because it's like health insurance is so affordable, but then if you need anything done, it's like everything is like millions of dollars, you know what I mean? So it's so ridiculous. I don't understand where all the money's coming from, how they're paying everybody. I really have no fucking clue. But the goal would be for health insurance and car insurance, like, and life insurance, like any type of insurance you need just to be provided by the government and shit. Like, everyone, it's more money paid into taxes every year, but nobody has to pay private entities, private companies for all these services and shit. And like, if something happens, then you just go through this agency that isn't scraping off the top and shit. And like, insurance is relatively affordable. Like, my car insurance right now is mega expensive. It's like $300 a month and shit because I'm driving rideshare and I got in a couple accidents, even though only one of them was my fault. And like, all I did was hit a curb. My insurance is like $300, like $320 a month right now. But for the most part, like, car insurance is only $100 a month. If you get your health insurance through your employer, it's usually affordable and shit. But like, specifically like car insurance, that's like what bothers me. Like, you see all these fucking advertisements and shit. There must be billions of dollars every year spent by car insurance companies on advertisements. I mean, that's just money coming out of our pocket, you know what I mean? Like, that's us paying that money and shit for those advertisements and shit. And like, not only are we paying for the advertisements, we're paying these companies to be profitable companies and shit, you know what I mean? If insurance was just something that was provided by the government to its citizens and shit, and like, we all paid into it, we'd be paying less monthly, you know what I mean? There'd be less money involved. Like, all these companies have is basically access to capital, you know what I mean? Like, that's what allowed them to like start up in the first place. But like, I mean, America has made access to capital and shit. But the point is, it's just like another sector that scrapes off the top. And if we could remove all the sectors that scrape off the top, then life is just more affordable. And like I said, everyone hates government-owned agencies, but what's worse, the government owning it or entity? And like I said, like, it's the government, but it's universally owned. Like, that's what I wish I saw with all these sectors. It's just universally owned. And like, electricity is like another example of whose right is it to profit off electricity? Like, why does electricity cost money? You know what I mean? Like, I would imagine it costs money to put up the towers and shit, and then whoever put up the towers, like the wires, they're the ones who own it and shit, and they own the electricity, and they're the ones who make money off the electricity. But like, if the government was the ones who put up all the towers originally, like, would it cost money? Like, if you use mad electricity in your house, why would it cost mad money and shit? Like, as someone who knows something about electricity could probably break it down, but like, what costs money about using the electricity? If we universally own all the wires and shit, why couldn't we just have electricity available to everybody? And we would just have to pay the people who put in the work to maintain the grid, like the electricians, like the people do the work. But the goal is to pay labor, not to pay some overlord. But it's not like everything is mad expensive these days. Like, there was a lady the other day in the produce aisle. It's like these people like are magnets to me and shit. But like, she just turned to me, she's like, everything is so expensive these days. Like, it's crazy how like I'm just trying to fucking shop in the produce aisle and buy some fucking fruits and vegetables, and fucking someone has to like say my kryptonite comment, like everything is so expensive, because I don't think everything is so expensive these days. And like, it's funny, I wasn't buying it then, but I bought avocados recently. I got 3 avocados for $1. Like, at one point throughout human history, can you get 3 avocados for $1? Like, that's an amazing price and shit. And it seems like everything is affordable these days. Like I was saying with the lottery stuff, like, it's not like there's anything that I wish I could have. Like, any technology that I wish I could have, I have. You know what I mean? Like, I talk about on our episode where I talk about how cheap all of our devices have become. But like, except for Apple products, like if you shop conventional brands, like if you just shop for like if Android and PC and shit, you could get everything so fucking cheap right now. You could get a smartphone for $100, you could get a nice computer for $300, and then you could get a big screen TV for $300. You could get everything so fucking cheap right now. Like, it's nothing is mad expensive right now, yo. And like, in terms of like food, if my back was against the wall, like I could eat in grocery, like I was talking about how amazing grocery stores, I could find enough food that I enjoy my meals for a week with $50. You know what I mean? Like, I could spend $50 in a week in a grocery store. My back was against the wall. But it's just like the cost of housing that feels inflated. You know, like my rent is $1,200 a month, and I have great rent price for someone who lives in downtown Austin. $1,200 a month is like amazing as shit. And like, but like my water is only $25. Like, I was complaining about how much all these services, like how we have overlords and shit, but like the services aren't even that expensive. Like, electric's like $75 a month. Like I said, my car insurance is like $300, but it's $100 for like a normal person. My health insurance is only $40 a month and shit. And then like, what are my other bills? My Sirius radio $25. My gym is $10. Then I was talking about internet and TV, like TV $60, internet $60, but the $1,200 rent is the only one that is a burden on me financially, to the point where it's like, oh, that's what keeps me working. You know what I mean? Like, because it's like, if I didn't have $1,200 rent, I wouldn't have to work at the rate I do. And I have such a straight job right now that I don't mind working at the rate I do. I work like 40 hours a week fucking driving Uber. Like, it's not bad at all, but it's the future I'm worried about. And like, who knows like how sustainable this job is for an extended period, because like I said, like I already have $300 car expenses of car insurance every month. Like, it might get up to $1,000 if I get a couple more accidents. You know what I mean? So I don't know how long this job is going to be sustainable. And like, I just don't want to work no bullshit ass job every fucking day. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to go back to working at Cheesecake Factory and be 90 years old with standing over a table like, oh yeah, welcome to the Cheesecake Factory. Like, that's my biggest fear, because I don't see myself ever retiring. I'm always going to have to pay for the price of living, which is housing. You know what I mean? So the fact that I'm always going to have to pay for housing, I'm always going to have to work a job. So if driving Uber isn't available to me because self-driving cars take over, I have to, or because car insurance got too expensive, I have to figure out another way. And like, I just want to eventually get out of the workforce. But the thing that's stopping me from getting out of it is how much money it costs to keep a roof over our heads. And like, what I think the problem with it is, it's not good for anybody for the costs of housing to come down. Like, anybody with power, you know what I mean? Like, it's good for people who are poor who don't have a house, like they're the ones who want to see real estate come down. But nobody who owns a house wants to see real estate come down. Who's calling all the shots? People own the houses, you know what I mean? So they want to see real estate go up and shit. But like, it's always like so hypocritical to me. Like that's a reflection of a good economy. Like when the real estate prices are high. Like to me, a reflection of a good economy should be affordable real estate. Like, I mean, to me, that's like a good economy. If you could be like, oh yeah, all of our citizens own a house. Like to me, that's a good economy. And how does that happen? When housing is affordable, you know what I mean? So like I get like when everything revolves around the market and shit, like how there's a housing market and like the housing market being up is a good thing and shit. But like it's hypocritical when you think about it. You know what I mean? Like if you have if every house is $10 million and shit, yeah, real estate's up, but is that a good thing? You know what I mean? Like, you want people in houses, but yeah, like, everyone owns a house here. It's a great place to live. That should be the sign of a flourishing economy. Like, everyone work and owns a house. But like I said, it's like a market, and like, the fact that there's a real estate market, it works against progress. You know what I mean? The fact that people who have houses already want to see the market stay up. But like, that's basically what it all comes down to, like, the price of housing and shit. It's just too expensive and shit. And like, that's the only thing that's such a problem and shit. And like, it feels like that comes back to overlords. You know what I mean? Like whoever owns a house, and people have a right to own houses and shit. But like, which I'll get to, like, do you have a right to own houses? You know what I mean? Like, if you build a house, then yeah, you have a right to own a house. And like, the way our world is set up, yeah, you have a right to own a house if you could afford it. But like, if you can't build a house, do you have a right to own it, to live in a castle? You know what I mean? Like, you bought it, so you have a right to live in it and shit. But like, I mean, someone who bought a house buys a castle through doing investing, you know what I mean? But like, I just want to see more of a trend of having houses available that you could buy that are affordable, that you don't have to be paying off for a million years and shit. And like, manufactured homes are a new thing and shit. And like, I love those. Like, they're like trailers, but like not on wheels. They're like built for homes to live in, and like, they work really well because like, they're nice houses and then like not built on the land, so they don't fuck anything up. So I think those are really good. But the problem with them is you have to pay rent on land to park it. When you buy a manufactured home, it comes like on a lot, and you have to pay like $500 monthly rent to the lot for the land. So you still have to like kind of pay like a rent payment. It's not like you get free of payments and shit. Like, I'm looking for something where I'm free of payments and shit, where like I don't have a fucking monthly housing payment to pay for and shit. But like, the problem, like, it comes back to what I was saying with like overlords and whose right is it to own services. Who the fucking right is it to own land? Like, who the fuck owns that land that had to pay rent to? Like, and I know there's probably some investment company that owns it and shit, you know what I mean? Like, that's what the problem is in the economy these days. The people don't own anything. I saw online, like, there was a girl did a video for $650 New York City apartment. It was like a closet, you know what I mean? Someone like literally made a closet into like a room, into an apartment. It's its own unit, but it's literally like the size of a closet and shit. And like, someone like wrote in the comments, like, I just think everybody's so backwards in life. Someone wrote in the comments like, we need to have laws against apartments this small. People deserve to have a decent type of life, and that involves a decent place to live. Like, the rhetoric, like, I hate it and shit. Like, a lot of people don't even stay in their apartment a lot, you know what I mean? Like, some people might just need someplace to crash at night, and like, that's the perfect place. Like, if you're like a busy New York City person and you're never in the apartment, but you just can't be homeless, you just need a bed at night, like, this is like the perfect apartment for you and shit. And like, I just feel like smaller units is like a good idea, to build smaller units, not to build like huge houses, you know what I mean? Like, once you build a huge house, the huge house exists, let people live in it. But like, I talk about on another episode, I think, like, we should limit the size of a house that you could build, you know what I mean, until we have everybody in housing, you know what I mean? Like, to me, it's like hypocritical to have like a economy where like, oh, our economy is great, and then you have one person living in a castle and another person, he walks down the street and he walks past 10 homeless people, you know what I mean? And like, I'm not trying to like stand on my high horse here, but it's just like, there should be some balance in the equity, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying redistribute wealth, I'm just saying there's flaws in the way shit goes down and shit. But yeah, like, other than resources being limited, I don't see any reason why, if we didn't have overlords, people couldn't live for free, you know what I mean? Because like, I feel like to live for free, all you need is, you need housing available to you, you need basic food available to you, and then you just need the grid paid for. And if we don't have private entities making money off of the grid, then to provide people with food and housing, all you need is enough housing and enough food. You know what I mean? And like, if you have people building all the infrastructure, if that's where all the labor was going to, then you could have enough housing for everybody and shit. And then like, when some people are building infrastructure and other people are growing food, and then that's how you could provide everybody with food. But like, all the only money it would cost would be money for the materials to build the construction. But like, that's what it is for me. Like, all about that's the way, like, it comes full circle back to like hitting the lottery, like creating a free existence for everybody. Like, something like oil is something that I know as limited in resources and shit, so like, I get how that costs money. But like, all these oil tycoons in Texas, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like such a communist right now, but like, what happened? They discovered the oil and then they just owned the fucking oil. You know what I mean? Like, that oil was on American soil, underneath American soil. Like, yeah, they were the first ones to it. They uncovered it. But eventually someone was going to find it. You know what I mean? So it's almost like, who the fuck are they to own the oil and shit? They just should get compensated for being the ones who uncovered it and shit. But like, once you discover oil on American land, like, I don't understand how that's just not our oil, and how like America doesn't just have oil and shit, but like, instead it's these rich people, these people get rich off of oil and shit. In a well-run society, people are getting paid off of stuff they create or their labor, you know what I mean? Not being the first person to something, and since they were the first person to that, they hit a gold mine, you know what I mean? Like, that's really what it is. It's like, literally, like, people were out there mining for gold back in the day. Like, if you uncover the gold, you should get compensation, but it's on Americans' land, you know what I mean? Like, someone was going to eventually discover it. But yeah, that's all I got for this episode. The moral of the story is creating a cheaper way of life. And I think that they've made it so that life is cheap, except, and I know there's no they, you know what I mean? But like, it's almost like it's set up so that life is cheap, but the cost of housing is expensive. So it keeps everybody working, and it keeps everybody in the pocket of these corporate entities, you know what I mean? Because it feels like we're just slaves to corporate entities. And like, I feel like a communist in this episode. I'm not, like, because like, in my opinion, like, the communist mentality wants everybody to be equal and shit. Like, I don't want everybody to be equal. I want people to, the more you put in, the more you get out, you know what I mean? But I want it to make sense, you know what I mean? Like, I want to be like, the more you put in, like, someone who puts in tons of construction labor is one of the people getting the most out of it, you know what I mean? It's not the people making investments, you know what I mean? Like, that's who's getting the most out of it right now. People who have capital to invest in shit. And like, that's the problem, you know what I mean? That's what the ownership class is. Like, and it's the problem of capitalism when there's overlords and shit. And like, because the more people that make money off investing, the less money there is to go around to pay people for labor, you know what I mean? Because people are making money off investing. It's got to come from somewhere. It's coming off the backs of people's labor. And it's just like, the more that was universally owned by us as a core, the less we would have to pay people for it, you know what I mean? Like, pay for these services. I just think it'd be better if we as a core owned everything, opposed to all these corporations that own stuff, you know what I mean? And people are such slaves to their jobs that they'll do anything to protect the corporations from losing their capital and losing their stranglehold on everything. Sterm Worm, trip of a lifetime. Let's fucking go.